Chapter 1. I adore New York City, despite how bloody expensive it is here. No, let's start this over. Chapter 1. I adore New York City. To me, no matter what the season is, this was a town that was made to exist on the silver screen. No, let's start this over. Chapter 1. I am too romantic about New York. New York means astonishing directors and charismatic actors, cinematographers who know all the angles. Ugh, this is tacky. Chapter 1. Los Angeles might be the home of cinema in the States, but New York is the most filmed city on Earth, and it's easy to see why. This feels like the capital city of the entire planet, and some of the greatest films of all time have been shot and set here. Yes, it might be the most iconic city for cinema, so I thought I would go through how it has been represented on the big screen. I'm wearing this mask because I'm not actually speaking. I don't want to be some annoying loud limey on the streets, so if my eyebrows don't match what I'm saying, that's why. And let's start with one of the most iconic early films shot here, 1933's King Kong, where that tragic beast climbs and dies atop the astonishing Empire State Building. In many ways, it's like a lot of films about New York. It's about someone coming to the city on a boat from a foreign land and then struggling to make it here. Yes, in the late 19th and early 20th century, New York became a gateway to America for immigrants all around the world, making the city an amazing melting pot of different cultures. Immigration is integral to New York's history, and that bleeds into the films about the metropolis. And it's impossible to talk about New York cinema without mentioning the most important director to capture the city, Italian-American New York native Martin Scorsese. For my money, the greatest living director. Of his 26 feature narrative films, half of them have been set here, and the first chronologically is Gangs of New York. Set in 1862, we have a city of immigrants from all over. Leonardo DiCaprio's Irishman is looking for vengeance on the man who murdered his father in a battle. And playing the terrifying lead villain, Bill the Butcher, is the remarkable Daniel Day-Lewis.
Whoopsie daisy!
It was actually shot in studios in Rome, but the recreation of the Five Points district in Manhattan is astonishing. And it's fair to say the area has changed quite a bit. The film shows the various types of immigrants in the city, including the Irish and Chinese. With this melting pot has also come a history of gang violence, something Scorsese would deal with in later films. But his next film chronologically takes us to 1870s New York and a very different side to the city, in The Age of Innocence. Yet again we have Daniel Day-Lewis, although he's far less terrifying here, as a gentleman lawyer with an incredibly difficult decision to make. Winona Ryder or Michelle Pfeiffer? Ooh, my lord, I wouldn't know what to do either.
Whoopsie daisy!
But the side that is shown here is the wealthy New York society. It feels a million miles away from the experience of poor immigrants. And this has always been a city of extremes, and the wealthy of New York are exceptionally wealthy.
Are you very much in love with her?
As much as a man can be.
Do you think there's a limit?
But now let's move into the 20th century and on to another great Italian-American director, Francis Ford Coppola, who made the exceptional Godfather film series. Well, the first two are exceptional.
This is an offer you can refuse.
These classic mob movies are about the American experience.
I believe in America. America has made my fortune.
The second movie works as both a prequel and sequel, and we follow the 9-year-old Vito Corleone who flees Sicily after the mob want him dead. He arrives in New York with the iconic Statue of Liberty greeting him, and we follow him in the city as he struggles to get by in Little Italy. Eventually he gets involved with the Italian mafia, killing a mobster and then becoming a respected mobster himself. Eventually he moves from Robert De Niro to Marlon Brando in Part 1. A gang war kicks off and soon his favourite son, Al Pacino, enters the life of crime and soon takes bloody revenge on the gangsters who tried to take his father's life. It's an iconic montage, and these steps behind me is where Barzini was killed. I briefly studied in New York and couldn't resist rolling down the same steps. The Godfather Part 1 and 2 show the changing nature of the city beautifully and create old New York perfectly, as did the underrated Milos Forman 1981 classic Ragtime. Also set at the turn of the 20th century, we see a whole lot of different sides of the city, including the incredibly wealthy, as well as the lives of African Americans and the struggles they faced in the city. A good place to get a sense of old New York is McSorley's Old Town Ale House, the oldest Irish bar in the city, which opened in the mid-19th century. Get a dark or a light, or both as I do, and soak in the history. Now let's get back to early 20th century Mobsters with another 1980s epic, Sergio Leone's remarkable Once Upon a Time in America, which shot a scene here. Much like The Godfather Part II, we see children who become gangsters, this time in the Jewish neighborhood of Williamsburg. By the 1920s, these kids have grown up and are now running speakeasies during Prohibition. It's another film about doing what it takes to make it in the city, and it shows New York developing all the way into the 1960s. It's one of the most beautifully shot New York pictures. Now let's move on to the 1940s and another old watering hole, P.J. Clark's. A replica of this saloon appeared in Billy Wilder's tale of alcoholism, The Lost Weekend, where the demon drink gets the better of Ray Milland. There was also Jules Dassin's The Naked City, showing a day in the life of detectives on the hunt for a murderer, which climaxes at the Williamsburg Bridge.
There is a pulse to a city, and it never stops beating. And some people earn their bread at night. You put on a record, you take it off. You put on another. Does anyone listen to this program except my wife?
But how was 1940s New York shown by the master Scorsese? Well, he's made 2 films set here during that decade. In New York, New York, it starts on VJ Day, and yet again we have Robert De Niro, this time as a saxophone player. For the movie, the iconic song New York, New York was written, most famously performed by Frank Sinatra. And the legendary lyrics, "If I can make it there, I'm gonna make it anywhere," is often a theme of films set here. And a story of a remarkable tough man making it in the 1940s was Scorsese's Raging Bull, a beautiful black and white film about the boxer Jake LaMotta. Again, we've got Robert De Niro as a tough man, and it also marks Scorsese's first film with Joe Pesci, the master at playing a hothead. And his most iconic hothead would be in Scorsese's crime epic, Goodfellas, set in New York from the 50s to the early 80s. This is a far less glamorous look at the world of Italian organized crime in the city, showing the real-life rise and fall of gangster Henry Hill, who even at the height of his rise lives a kind of tacky, kind of lame and kind of paranoid life. But even at the end of it all, he misses it. It has to be one of the very, very, very best films set here. And we're off to another watering hole, this time in Queens, Nears, which featured prominently in the film. And while we're talking about Scorsese and organized crime...
Please come back Saturday, though. Yeah. Please do. Please do. We'll have fun.
And while we're talking about Scorsese, organized crime, and 1950s New York, let's talk about his last film to deal with the mafia, The Irishman, maybe his most somber look at that world, a perspective from an older man, a man nearer death, thinking about the mistakes he has made in his life. Yet again we have De Niro as a real-life gangster, this time the hitman Frank Sheeran. It includes the hit on Crazy Gallo that happened here in Little Italy, where Umberto's clam house used to be. The film also features some not too convincing de-aging.
What's the problem, kid?
Also, a lot of The Godfather Part II is set in the 1950s. But what about films set in the 1950s that were filmed in the 1950s? Well, there were some absolute classics. The famous snitch, Elia Kazan, made On the Waterfront. The very famously pervy Alfred Hitchcock made the wonderful voyeuristic Rear Window. And Billy Wilder also made The 7-Year Itch. This has to be one of the most famous gratings on Earth. Actually, it probably just is the most famous grating. My favourite New York film of the 50s was The Sweet Smell of Success. Another film about a chancer struggling to get by. Cinematographer James Wong Howe beautifully captured New York of the 50s in this noir about an influential newspaper columnist who decides to use his power to ruin the life of a man dating his sister. It's exceptional, with two marvellous performances from Burt Lancaster and Tony Curtis. And maybe the most iconic 50s New York picture is Sidney Lumet's superb 12 Angry Men, which takes place at the courthouse. No one rolls down the steps, but this courtroom drama is full of tension and high stakes. And even though it's a room full of 12 white guys, it still deals with the racial tensions within the city. Also set in the 50s and dealing with racial tension in the city, this time with finger clicking and dancing, was West Side Story, featuring some of the least menacing gangs ever seen on screen. But now let's move into the 1960s, where music and culture were beginning to change. In Greenwich Village, political and counterculture changes manifested in folk music, with the legendary Bob Dylan appearing on the scene, which was depicted in the recent music biography film A Complete Unknown. But a far better film, literally about a complete unknown, was told in a fictional tale about one of the many who try and fail to make it here. The Coen brothers' beautifully bleak Inside Llewyn Davis, where Oscar Isaacs played a folk singer who fails to become a someone. Some of it was shot in this alley behind me.
Solo act?
No, I had a partner. Threw himself off the George Washington Bridge.
George Washington Bridge? You throw yourself off the Brooklyn Bridge, traditionally. George Washington Bridge. Who does that?
But maybe the most iconic 60s New York film, hey, I'm walking here, was Midnight Cowboy.
I'm walking here! I'm walking here! Up yours, you son of a bitch! You don't talk me that way! Get out of here!
With another tale of a man coming to the big city to make his fortune, this time setting his sights far lower, wanting to be a male escort. And yet again we have a character who fails. John Voight gives a career best performance as a Texan who arrives to make big bucks with his Big Johnson, but ends up in squalor. Alongside him is Dustin Hoffman as Ratso, one of the great fictional hustlers of the city. And two other famous fictional hustlers appeared in the 60s in New York native Mel Brooks's hilarious The Producers.
I'm hysterical. I'm wet. I'm wet. I'm hysterical and I'm wet. I'm in pain.
Set in and around another iconic side of the city, Broadway, we see two men purposefully trying to put on a flop to make their fortune. And again these men fail, but in a remarkably funny way this time. And there were some other exceptional films filmed here in that decade. One of the greatest horror films of all time, Rosemary's Baby, was filmed at the Dakota Building, where real-life tragedy would strike years later when John Lennon was murdered here. But my favourite New York set 1960s film is Billy Wilder's The Apartment, roughly set here behind me, but filmed on a set in Los Angeles.
When I think of him all by himself in that jail in Havana, would you like to see his picture?
Not particularly.
It's about a man who, while trying to make it here, in the office world, lets out his apartment to his superiors to have extramarital affairs. It's a beautifully romantic film about the struggles of life and the power of love. And we haven't mentioned Scorsese for about 3 minutes. Well, he made his feature film debut in the 60s with Who's That Knocking at My Door? But it would be the next decade that he would really make an impact. Yes, we can now move into the greatest decade for American filmmaking, the 1970s. Where maybe for the first time, New York and not LA felt like the capital city for film. Scorsese's masterpiece Mean Streets was shot here, in his home of Little Italy. He wrote the script as well, and it deals with the conflict of a young man, the choice between religion and the alluring world of organized crime. Following men on the fringes of the crime world in the 70s, this is a marvellous companion piece to The Irishman. Here we have Scorsese's younger, childlike look at the intriguing world of crime. And by The Irishman, we see that seedy world from the perspective of an old man who it's all gone wrong for. But within the 70s, Scorsese also made my favourite New York City movie, the 1976 masterpiece, Taxi Driver. The bloody climax taking place at the apartment building behind me. In the 1970s, New York was not a particularly safe place, especially at night, and this film explores the deteriorating mental state of a night shift taxi driver in the city. A Vietnam vet played by Robert De Niro. A man that's confused, racist, angry, and lonely. And part of what's driving him further down this rabbit hole of insanity is the madness of the city itself. New York is a city that is alive with character. It's marvellous, beautiful and charming, and also sinister, dark and crazy. And there's another great director from the city that made films about his home. Kind of about people struggling to get by. It's just rich people struggling to not be anxious and to hide their affairs. Yes, New York native Woody Allen made some of his very best films here in the 1970s. And Manhattan has to be one of the most beautifully shot New York films of all time. It's called Manhattan, but mostly revolves around Allen sleeping with young women. He also made Annie Hall, which is one of the earliest films to compare the lifestyle of LA and New York. And we also had 3 amazing New York classics in the 70s from Sidney Lumet. Network was a masterful satire about television networks in the city using a news anchor's deteriorating mental state to gain more viewers.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take this anymore!
And people having a bad time in the city didn't stop there. In his film Dog Day Afternoon, we have Al Pacino's struggling bank robber over the course of a hot summer's day, which was shot here. And Al Pacino also starred as the real-life Serpico, a New York cop who wouldn't take bribes and played by the rules and got shot for his honesty. And speaking of cops in the city, there was one of the all-time great police procedural dramas, William Friedkin's The French Connection, with Gene Hackman giving one of the greatest performances of all time as Popeye Doyle, the detective determined to bring down French drug dealers at all costs. It also features one of the all-time best car chases. And the chase culminates here. Another iconic fictional New York cop appeared in the blaxploitation film Shaft.
Shaft. How
hotter than Bond, cooler than Bullet. Rated R. If you want to see Shaft, ask your mama.
But my favourite blaxploitation film has to be Across 110th Street, a film that explores conflict between Italian-American and African-American criminals and a racist police force, featuring amazing performances from Yaphet Kotto and Anthony Quinn. And in the 1970s, we got to see many different sides of the city. The marvellous New York subway system was one of the stars of the excellent thriller The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, where a gang of colour-coded thieves hold up a subway carriage. And the subway also featured prominently in the effortlessly cool The Warriors, where a gang have to get from the Bronx to Coney Island while running away from all the other gangs in the city. And The Warriors captures so many parts of this great city brilliantly. Broadway was highlighted again in Bob Fosse's somewhat autobiographical masterpiece, All That Jazz. Possibly the most 70s movie of the 70s was set here, Saturday Night Fever. And for my money, the most underrated and underseen 70s New York movie has to be Girlfriends, a brilliant look at the friendship of two young women yet again struggling to get by in the world/city. And speaking of underrated films, let's enter the 1980s and once again start with the master Martin Scorsese, when he made two of his funniest, most underrated films of his career. In The King of Comedy, we get another very Taxi Driver type story, the tale of a madman who resorts to violence but somehow is made a star. Often a story about a person looking for fame and notoriety is saved for films set in Los Angeles, but here it is brilliantly shown, with a struggling, deeply unfunny comedian who dreams of being a late-night talk show host. The film, alongside Taxi Driver, would heavily, and I mean heavily, inspire Joker, which was also shot in this wonderful city. But the other Scorsese New York classic of this decade is the brilliant dark comedy After Hours, where an office worker has a wild night out that he can't escape from in Soho. This area is now very upmarket, so it's incredible to see how much it has changed. And the other New York native, Woody Allen, also made some classics in this decade. My favourites being Crimes and Misdemeanors and Hannah and Her Sisters. Two more very funny films about rich people having affairs. And he, Scorsese and Coppola teamed up for the somewhat disappointing anthology New York Stories. But Scorsese's segment was pretty good. But there was a new New York native who was about to make a hell of an impact in the 1980s. Yes, Spike Lee made his first joints in that decade and really made a name for himself with the 1988 masterpiece Do the Right Thing.
Always do the right thing.
That's it?
That's it.
I got it. I'm gone.
This Spike Lee joint is one hell of a movie. It was powerful then and has since lost none of its power or none of its relevance. It was so impactful that only 10 years later it was selected by the Library of Congress for preservation in the National Film Registry. Rather than follow one person, we follow a whole neighborhood in Brooklyn on one incredibly hot summer's day. It's a film full of life, color, attitude, humor, and just anger. Racial tensions in the area begin to reach boiling point as the day's stress leads to violence. The cast is next level, including great performances from Danny Aiello, Ozzie Davis, John Turturro, Rosie Perez, and Samuel L. Jackson. And to be honest, most of the cast is fantastic. It deals with race relations straight on and pulls no punches in showing the hatred that lies within so many of us. Lee's filmmaking has never been better. The editing, cinematography, and music are all top rate. It has an energy to it that is reminiscent of Scorsese's early work.
Time out! Y'all take a chill. You need to cool that shit out. And that's the double truth, Ruth.
But there were also other tensions in the city that was explored in the 80s. The tension between its residents and ghosts, which was exploited in the amazingly entertaining comedy Ghostbusters, which highlights so many wonderful parts of the city.
I love this town!
And another iconic comedy was set here, the wonderfully romantic When Harry Met Sally. Here I am in Katz's Deli, trying some of the very, very expensive orgasmic food.
Yes! 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 Oh! I'll have what she's having.
And there's Wyn Evans, the Go Compare guy, getting 2 pints at lunch. I assume he's with someone. And another iconic meal was shown in My Dinner with Andre, set in this restaurant behind me. And fancy restaurants wouldn't just be the home of people philosophizing, but also the realm of yuppies. And the coked up, super wealthy, super corrupt Wall Street bastards would become a new character of the city, maybe most famously shown in Oliver Stone's Wall Street. And later, in American Psycho, it was brilliantly made fun of, with Christian Bale's lunatic yuppie living in that apartment behind me.
Do you like Phil Collins?
And we may as well go into the 1990s with Martin Scorsese, dealing with that topic in The Wolf of Wall Street, based on the real-life tosser Jordan Belfort, whose corrupt practices made him millions, but also led to his downfall. It captures the excesses of this ghastly life in a very vivid and funny way.
Come on.
And now let's have our last Scorsese film of this video, his criminally underrated Bringing Out the Dead. Much like Taxi Driver, we follow around a late-night professional driver losing his mind, this time an ambulance driver in Hell's Kitchen, suffering from burnout, played brilliantly by Nick Cage. It deals with some very dark themes, while also again being incredibly funny. I don't think Scorsese gets enough credit for just how funny his movies can be.
What's his name?
I be banging.
What you mean I be banging?
I be banging.
What the hell kind of name is I be banging?
I don't know his real name.
Frederick Smith.
Okay, Freddie.
It's Frederick.
Okay, I be banging.
Right!
Frederick!
I be banging!
And another funny director who tackled the city in the 1990s was Terry Gilliam, with The Fisher King, which dealt with a side of the city rarely covered, the sheer amount of mentally disturbed homeless people that struggle here. And in the film we have Robin Williams playing a man living on the street, who along with the help of a fallen from grace Howard Stern-esque DJ, played by Jeff Bridges, looks for love and the Holy Grail. The most iconic scene taking place in possibly the greatest train station on Earth, Grand Central. And this beautiful station also appeared in the excellent shootout at the end of Carlito's Way. And as I have repeatedly said, this is a city of immigrants, and some of them are illegal aliens, which was shown in Men in Black. But one of the best films to feature 2 people from different sides of the city coming together to save the day was the marvelously New York-y Die Hard with a Vengeance, where Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson clash heads while stopping a mad German bomber. One of the scenes where they disarm a bomb takes place in this park, and I'm still wrapping my head around how they did it.
2 gallons in here, right?
Right.
Leaving exactly 1 gallon of empty space, right?
Yeah.
A full 5 gallons here, right?
Right.
You pour 1 gallon out of 5 gallons into there, we have exactly 4 gallons in there.
Yes.
Pour it in there, come on.
Macaulay Culkin stayed in the Plaza Hotel, rubbed shoulders with Donald Trump, and tried to do his best to kill 2 criminals in Home Alone 2.
Directed.
Stanley Kubrick showed the horny side of rich society in Eyes Wide Shut. And the King of New York in the 90s was revealed to be Christopher Walken. Now let's move into the next decade, where this century started with an unbelievable tragedy that felt like something straight out of a movie, but this horror was all too real.
Good morning, America. I'm Charles Gibson.
I'm Diane Sawyer, and it's Tuesday, September 11th, 2001.
Other than that, it's kind of quiet around the country. We like quiet. It's quiet. It's too quiet.
This just in, you are looking at obviously a very disturbing live shot there. That is the World Trade Center, and we have confirmed reports this morning that a plane has crashed.
As we come on now, we have serious news of a major, a very tragic incredible plane crash into the World Trade.
And dealing with this awful event have been some rather middling films. Oliver Stone's World Trade Center showed the experience of responders trapped under the rubble. The day was used as a tacky twist in the weepy romance Remember Me, and it was used as Oscar bait in Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close. But there was one film that dealt with how this city felt post the tragedy. Spike Lee was starting production on 25th Hour when the attacks happened, and decided to incorporate the sense of loss, anger and uncertainty into his film about a man's last day before going to prison for drug dealing. The best scene in the movie has a furiously frustrated Edward Norton rant about the city.
Fuck the Wall Street brokers, self-styled masters of the universe, Michael Douglas, Gordon Gekko wannabe motherfuckers figuring out new ways to rob hardworking people blind. Send those Enron assholes to jail for fucking life.
And with the new century came some new directors who captured different sides of the Big Apple. Brooklyn native Darren Aronofsky dealt with struggling drug addicts in Requiem for a Dream, and 10 years later dealt with a ballerina struggling with the stress, pressure and fear facing a ballerina at the height of her success in Black Swan, shot at the wonderful Lincoln Center. Where a few scenes were shot for one of the most underrated movies of this century so far, the remarkably depressing Margaret. Things weren't all depressing. Wes Anderson brought his quirky humour to the city in the brilliant The Royal Tenenbaums. And speaking of quirky, one of the great New York screenwriters had the city at the centre of a few of his films. Yes, Charlie Kaufman set Being John Malkovich here, although it was mostly shot in LA. And in 2004, there was the tragically beautiful Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, where both Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet got each other erased from their memories at the clinic behind me.
Is there any risk of brain damage?
Well, technically speaking, the procedure is brain damage, but it's on a par with a night of heavy drinking. Nothing you'll miss.
And Kaufman also dealt with Broadway and struggling artists in Synecdoche, New York. Also struggling on Broadway was an actor in the fantastic quote-unquote one-shot dark comedy Birdman.
Hey, don't be a dick. Let me get an autograph. Dude, you fucking rock!
For wealthy people having affairs, Woody Allen was kind of replaced with Noah Baumbach, who's made two great divorce movies set in the city, The Squid and the Whale and Marriage Story. But my favourite of his films is Frances Ha, one of the better, more recent films to deal with someone with big aspirations in the Big Apple, and one who doesn't make it, with Greta Gerwig playing a young dancer who basically fails at everything.
What do you do?
It's kind of hard to explain.
Because what you do is complicated?
Because I don't really do it.
This is a city where even its superheroes struggle, and one of the best examples comes in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man films. Yes, he may have super strength, be able to swing through the city, climb walls and have spidey sense, but he still has to work as a pizza delivery guy to pay for his massive rent.
Rent?
Hi. What's brilliant about Raimi's Peter Parker pictures is that New York is one of the main characters, with the city feeling alive and the people of the city coming together.
Oh yeah, I got some for your ass! You mess with Spidey, you mess with New York!
You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us! Oh.
Spider-Man doesn't kill, but another New York hero arrived in the 2010s with a ginormous body count. Yes, we got Keanu Reeves's John Wick. And in more recent years, we still have classic New York stories being told. The immigrant story was told in a new way in the heart-wrenching tale of unrequited love, Past Lives. The stressful New York minute of a hustler was captured superbly in Uncut Gems. And in the Best Picture winning Anora, we see a woman with Russian heritage, a woman struggling to get by, hustling as a stripper in Coney Island. And we see the huge gap between the wealthy and the poor. Some things never change in this city. If you're not one of the mega wealthy, you've got to do whatever it takes to get by. But what does the future hold for this city? Will it be abandoned by everyone except Will Smith, as in I Am Legend? Will it be destroyed by nature, as it is in The Day After Tomorrow? Or will it become a mega security prison, as it does in the wonderful cult hit Escape from New York? Well, if it does, lock me up and throw away the key, because for me, this might just be the best place on earth. New York is a city where cultures from all around the world came and settled here, lived alongside each other and made this place so unique. It's a city of tough people, wonderful artists, and undeniable beauty and character. The most photographed city on earth is truly something to behold. And I may not be a New Yorker, but I love cinema. And I gotta say,